To bring us up to date, here is Elizabeth and her father's coronation oaths. Not as grand as some of them, but just so that you know this isn't just me talking, one of our great lawyers, 100 years later, Sir William Blackstone, or 75 years later, said this about the Coronation Oath and the Bill of Rights. And incidentally, Sir William Blackstone, many of you will know, wrote some marvellous books which are very highly regarded as literary works and works on the law, called 4 constitutional volumes of his book. Anyway, he says this: however, in what form it soever be conceived, this is most indisputably a fundamental and original and express contract. So there we have it. The Crown is bound by a contract. And to reduce that contract to a plain certainty, so that whatever doubts might be formally raised by weak and scrupulous minds about the existence of such an original contract, they must now entirely cease, especially with regard to every prince who has reigned since the year 1688. So you can see that I'm just showing you things that I have been able to confirm in our law books and elsewhere, and in court judgments and so on. So I thought, well, this is terrific. I think I found a limitation to Parliament's power, because Parliament always says it can do what it likes, it can do anything. So I thought, right, we better ask a question. So I got my MP, Howard Flight, who kindly went along with this idea, to pose a question of Tony Blair back in 2000, it was July 2000, getting a while back now. I wrote this letter, or I wrote a parliamentary question for Howard Flight, and I thought, well, let's ask the Prime Minister whether he could recommend a breach of the Coronation Oath, because that ought to be a fundamental thing. Let's see if they feel if they can do what they like, they can recommend a breach of the Coronation Oath. It's a bit difficult to see how Her Majesty could agree to a breach of her oath. So I wrote the letter, and Tony Blair couldn't answer it himself, which is really hardly surprising now. He got Jan Taylor. The Prime Minister has asked me to arrange for a Minister of the Home Office to reply to you direct. I actually find that quite astonishing. It's a very simple question, and there's no doubt what the answer ought to be. We all know that. But anyway, Jack Straw was then Home Secretary, and he wrote back, I can confirm that the Coronation Oath is a solemn undertaking by the Sovereign and is regarded as binding throughout her reign. Binding throughout her reign, strong words. Her Majesty would not be advised to give her assent to a provision which contradicted that oath. Wow, we're getting somewhere. Some limitation. So let's just go back and have another look at the Coronation Oath Act. And on Acts of Parliament, you have a part which is called the preamble, obviously at the beginning. And it's very interesting. Here's the preamble to the 1688-9 Coronation Oath Act. And it says, whereas by the laws and ancient usage of this realm, the kings and queens thereof have taken a solemn oath upon the evangelists at their respective coronations, to maintain the statute, laws, and customs of the said realm, and all the people and inhabitants thereof in their spiritual and civil rights and properties. Well, think about that. That's really important, because it's telling you why the oath is taken. The oath is taken to maintain the statute, laws, and customs so that the inhabitants, the subjects, can be kept in their spiritual and civil rights and properties. That's quite a thing. So that is the fundamental purpose of Parliament. It's not to take your goods away from you, your chattels and your possessions. It's to secure your private property and your spiritual and civil rights. Very important. And then, further into the coronation ceremony itself, the Queen, having said that she'll agree to the statutes in Parliament, or agree to govern only according to the statutes in Parliament agreed on, will you to your power cause law and justice in mercy to be executed in all your judgments. King or Queen, I will. So there you have it. All judgments will include law with justice in mercy. The things which I have herebefore promised, I will perform and keep, so help me God. So that is a very solemn business. The Queen is in effect elected at her coronation. Of course, there's no objections in recent times. I think you have to go back to, times of Alfred or whatever, but technically it can be conceived as an election. Amazing what you can get on the internet this day and age. A very good friend of mine who actually got me started on this whole thing, a chap called Mike Burke, discovered this on eBay for about £7, and it's actually a line print, as you can see, of that ceremony in the in the banqueting house, of the Declaration of Rights being read to William and Mary. And interesting, this dates from the 1750s, and notice that the title at the top says, "The Clerk of the Court reading the Bill of Rights," well, it should really be the Declaration, but the Bill of Rights to the Prince of Orange in the banqueting, of Prince and Princess of Orange, to the banqueting house at Whitehall, previous to the offering of the crown. So there is an interesting thing. What we have is we have a set of conditions under which the crown was offered. We then have a contract made with the people by the monarchy swearing a coronation oath, that they would abide by the words of the rule of law. Well, these words in the Bill of Rights and the content of it are there to control the authorities of the Crown. And if they control the authorities of the Crown, they control the authorities of our Parliament. That must be the only logical deduction. The House of Commons and the House of Lords decide upon context and content, and they determine bills, and once they have agreed them, they are then offered for royal assent, and it is only at that point that a bill becomes an enactment. So the Crown still retains all the power, technically. That is where the power resides, and it resides there. It's our power under contract to the Queen, and it's about our governance. Experience has taught, 300 years after the event in 1988, of course, it was thought, well, we better celebrate the Glorious Revolution, 300 years. And they invited lots of heads of Commonwealth and other people over here. And they had a bit of a shindig, and the Queen made a speech. And these are some of the words or an extract from it. Experience has taught that the peoples can enjoy the full fruits of liberty, security and justice only when they are represented in a sovereign legislature, whose laws are interpreted by an independent judiciary. The Bill of Rights and the Scottish Claim of Rights, which was their equivalent of it, are still part of the statute law, are the sure foundation on which the whole edifice of parliamentary democracy rests, and it has a great influence abroad, especially in the United States of America and the Commonwealth. So there you have it. You're looking at some basic fundamentals which we acknowledged, and of course £2 coins. The Royal Mint printed this little set there for celebrating the tercentenary with the Bill of Rights on the side of the coins. They did them in silver, and there's a Scottish Claim of Rights, and there's another one. Interestingly, again, you would think, wouldn't they on a document like this want to show the Declaration of Rights? But no, if you read the text, it says that this was a victory for Parliament to gain power. It also has a document in the corner there with an ink splodge on it. Well, quite amazingly, when they were writing the Declaration of Rights between the 12th of February and or before the 12th of February, somebody splodged the ink on a copy, and that sheet or skin of vellum still exists, and so that's what's actually in the corner of the documents here. It's actually a draft sheet for the actual Declaration of Rights. But they don't depict it on this document, which is a shame, and there it is. It's the document nearest me. Quite extraordinary. It should be much respected. So that's the fundamentals of this thing. So I've basically discovered that they get a bit shy when you say, well, can you recommend a breach of the coronation oath? So I thought we'd better go to Parliament's very own handbook, which is called Erskine May. And this is, again, a second-hand copy from the 1920s, but it doesn't alter these principles. It's very interesting because it says that the Act of Settlement affirms that the laws of England are the birthright of the people thereof. And all the kings and queens who shall ascend the throne of this realm ought to administer the government of the same, according to the said laws. And all their officers and ministers ought to serve them respectively, according to the same. So here you're seeing quite clearly there's an Act of Parliament that tells ministers that they've got to abide by the law. The Succession of the Crown Act, which was an anti-Jacobite act in 1707, declared it high treason for anyone to maintain and affirm by writing, printing or preaching that the kings or queens of this realm, by and with the authority of Parliament, are not able to make laws and statutes of sufficient force and validity to limit and bind the Crown and the dissent, limitation, inheritance, and government thereof. Interesting point, isn't it? Nor was this a modern principle of constitutional law established for the first time by the Revolution of 1688. If not admitted in its whole force so far back as the Great Charter of King John, it has been affirmed by Parliament in very ancient times. So there we have it. That's Parliament's own handbook saying, well, wait a minute, we've got the rule of law here. So the rule of law is not just do as we say. The rule of law is a principle. It is a principle about how we shall be governed. And that, of course, is vital, because if it's a principle about how we shall be governed, it probably sets out how we can get redress and remedy.